Okay, for this short demo, I did a jar filled with little Hershey's candies. And the challenge for me on this was I don't know about you, but it can be real easy for me if I see really complex patterns or like clumps of leaves, things where there's just tons of detail going on. It's easy to kind of get overwhelmed. And so this was a fun challenge. So I sat down. The first thing I did was just do a simple pencil drawing, just trying to map out some of the large spaces and large shapes and where just a few of those candies were without getting highly detailed. Then as I began to paint, I began to block it into smaller and smaller shapes. And that's the trick to this is if you confront something that's got lots and lots of details, is to not let yourself get overwhelmed with all that visual data, but see if you can't break things down into the largest possible shapes. And then once you've got those under control, you can begin slowly but surely to carve in to those big shapes and begin to describe the simpler shapes. Another thing you want to do is that as you're working, you want to have a discriminating eye. You don't want to look at something like this and say, well, there's 74 candies, I got to get all 74. Well, that may be just way too many. It may not be visually pleasing to see all of those pieces. It might be confusing. So you want to be selective, because a painting is made not with just what you put in, but also with what you leave out. That's just as critical to making a good painting, is to have that discriminating eye where you know what to leave out as well as what to put in. So once you've got that established, then you begin putting those final details on the different pieces, in my case these different little candies. And there again, you want to be careful and not allow yourself to focus on every single highlight, every single detail that you see, because remember that even the most complex pattern, unless it's just flat on a wall, it's going to be on something that's turning in space. So if you're doing a complex, say a paisley pattern on a pillow, remember that that pillow is probably lit from one side, so it's going to be darker on the other. It's going to have it's going to have shadows, it's going to have midtones and highlights. And so in the shadow areas, don't put all of the detail that you see. Keep it subdued, because what winds up happening is something that's really complex, one will tend to flatten the form out. So a person will get so caught up in the details that they forget about that this is a form that's turning in space. It's got shadows, and one side's going to be darker than the other. And they just flatten it all out because they're treating it as the same. Remember that, and also just because you see it, that doesn't necessarily mean you need to put it in. So your eye, excuse me, in my case with the candies, those little highlights on the aluminum foil, is very important that I didn't put all of them in as intensely as I saw them, because it would very often detract from the illusion I'm trying to make that some of those candies are deeper into the jar and some of them are curving around back further away. So you want to watch your edges, keep those soft where it's further away or deeper in shadow, keep them harder where it's closer to you and where you want your visual interest. So that kind of about wraps that up. If you saw very quickly my wife's hand kind of pop in, she's one of my critics. She'll come in and look at a painting and say, you might want to tone this down or bring this out and stuff like that. So don't be afraid to get a good second eye in there to help you along. All right, well, I think that about wraps it up. This was a fun little painting. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've enjoyed this episode of The Arthropologist, please hit the like button. And if you'd like to see more episodes like this, think about subscribing. I'm Bill Wilson, and I'm The Arthropologist.